It's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to this edition of Q&A with the Coach. Today we have a question from Idruski who says, "Hey Coach, question." That's what I'm here for. If you have a question, just leave it in the comment section down below. I see some videos of MMA fighters going against other martial arts in that style specific rule set. The MMA fighter tends to be the loser, but why? Well, how about that? We have somebody who does not specialize in a certain sport, compete in that certain sport against people who specialize in that specific sport, and then the non-specialist loses to the specialist. How about that? Nobody is astounded if, say, somebody who is a tennis player, who has never played basketball before, isn't great at basketball, and loses in a game of one-on-one against Michael Jordan. Nobody's surprised by that. But there's more to this question. If he goes against a boxer, the MMA fighter, goes against a boxer and gets striked out, what does that mean about his own skill set? It means his skill set is the sport of mixed martial arts rather than the sport of boxing. Or that the boxer was simply a better boxer. The same with wrestling, submission, grappling, etc. Is MMA the martial arts definition of jack of all trades, master of none? No. An MMA fighter should be a specialist in the sport of MMA. Yeah, mixed martial arts is its own sport. A lot of people still don't get this. I've made at least a dozen videos on this channel on this topic. MMA is not a combination of boxing and wrestling. MMA is its own unique sport and needs to be respected as such and trained as such. But there's more to this question. I'm betting a lot of people think of a good MMA fighter as a master of all, but that's apparently not the case. Yeah, look. If you are a good MMA fighter, and there are a lot of different skill sets that can equal a good MMA fighter, there are lopsided skill sets that can be highly successful in the sport of MMA. Take a look at, say, Ben Askren. You probably were thinking about Ben Askren when you were talking about the MMA fighter getting outboxed by the boxer, like when he went and he fought Jake Paul, and Jake Paul had better boxing and beat Ben Askren. Why? What is Ben Askren's skill set? Wrestling. Especially wrestling in the context of mixed martial arts. He's very good at closing the distance, getting hold of his opponent, putting them on the floor, and squishing them on the ground. All things you cannot do in boxing. And so, when he tries out a sport where he cannot even use the skill sets that he's good at, it should come as no surprise that he's not going to shine in the sport of boxing the same way he did in the sport of MMA. And some of you might be thinking, well, what about Francis Ngannou? He did really well in his first boxing match ever against the heavyweight champion of the world. Yeah, he did. Because Francis Ngannou, as he displayed not only in that boxing match, but throughout his MMA career, is a significantly better striker than Ben Askren. And you could argue Ben Askren has a radically divergent skill set than Ngannou, a much more highly decorated wrestler. Fighting is very much like rock, paper, scissors in so many ways, especially when we add more variables to it. We've spoken before about the triad of performance. I'm borrowing a term from our friend Zach Tellender. Right? The triad of performance. On one side, we've got our, what do we call that? Athleticism, our physique, I call it athleticism. Zach called it, I'm blanking on the term, physiology. That's the one, physiology. All the athletic, physical attributes, your size, your strength, your flexibility, your endurance, everything physical. On another side of the triangle, we have specificity, which is our technique, our specific training, our sport-specific adaptation. And then at the bottom, we have another side of that triangle, of that triad of performance, which is what? Psychology. Every mental, emotional aspect of the game. Your toughness, your grit, your determination. I put up a post recently saying something along the lines of, champions are not necessarily the strongest, the fastest, the smartest, or the guys with the best technique. They are the ones who show up. And they will never be anything less. So, psychology, fight psychology, you have to be the guy who shows up, you have to be the guy who is present, and you have to be the guy willing to take punishment when the going gets tough. And there are a lot of guys who have amazing physiology and great specificity, and when they get hurt, all of that goes out the window. Or there are guys who are gifted with amazing talents, but they just don't have a particular interest in getting into a cage fight and enduring that kind of ordeal. That's okay. You don't have to. Unless you want to be a champion, in which case you have to show up. That's part of the psychology of it. It's not just walking into the cage, it's having the determination to walk into the gym over and over and over again, when you'd rather not. There's more to this question, though. So there's another paragraph. I'm pretty sure the fact is that defense/offense is of one facet is always going to compromise your ability to go against other styles in a fight, such as keeping your stance such as to both defend strikes and takedowns, as probably the most obvious one, but I'd like to get a more complete take on it from you. Okay, so if we have somebody who specializes in the sport of mixed martial arts, who does not compete in boxing, who does not cross-train on the regular in these other combat sports, but rather focuses specifically on being an MMA fighter. And some of you are saying, well, what? In my MMA gym, we cross-train all the time. We have a Muay Thai class, and a boxing class, and a BJJ class, and a wrestling class. And, okay, sure, you have a bunch of classes at your gym. I hear you. A lot of people do. Can you compete with wrestlers on any level? High school, collegiate, national level, world level, Olympic level? Can you compete at any level in wrestling because of the wrestling class that you take at your gym? Can you win tournaments in jiu-jitsu under any rule set? IBJJF, ADCC, NAGA, etc., etc. Can you win jiu-jitsu tournaments because of your jiu-jitsu class that you're cross-training in? Can you compete and win in amateur boxing, let alone professional, because of the boxing class that you cross-train in? Some of you might be able to do that. Some of you maybe not, because there are radically divergent skill sets. An MMA fighter, in spite of the fact that you must be well-rounded, you must know how to strike and grapple and clinch and hand fight and stuff takedowns and do takedowns and everything else. Not everybody's at the same level. There are levels to the game, and there are levels to the, I guess you could say, compartmentalization of the game, to the striations of the game. So let's use a few fighters as an example. A lot of folks here on YouTube like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He's had a pretty good run in the UFC. He's popular with traditional martial artists because of his karate background. He's a super nice guy as far as I can tell. Charismatic dude. He's got a YouTube channel that's also popular, hence his popularity on YouTube. Is he the best at every single skill set? Is he equally skilled at every skill set that goes into MMA? What's his forte? Karate, standing, striking, punching, kicking, fighting from outside the pocket. Specifically, that's his forte. Does he cross-train? Of course he does. Does he cross-train in boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai? Of course he does. Does he specialize in those things? No. Is he going to be able to be competitive in the sport of wrestling with a high-level wrestler. I've never seen him attempt it. He might surprise us, but I'm guessing maybe not. Is he going to be winning nationals? IBJJF nationals? Is he going to be winning a Naga tournament? Is he going to be doing an ADCC tournament and bringing home gold medals? He might surprise me. I haven't seen him do it, but I'm guessing that's probably not his forte. Look at a different MMA fighter. Give me a name. John Jones. John Jones is kind of an anomaly because he's kind of good at a lot of different things. He's got this deep wrestling background. His wrestling's very good, but he doesn't stop there. He kept expanding his repertoire of abilities. He's a very good striker outside of the pocket, inside of the pocket, clinching. John Jones is kind of good at everything. But he also has very specific techniques and strategies that he relies on. He's got a very unique style that's very John Jones, and it's very difficult to copy, largely because of his physiology. Do you remember, what was his name? Marco Aurelio? He was a Brazilian dude with a capoeira background, and he had an okay MMA career, but he became very famous on YouTube, especially amongst capoeira practitioners, because he would do the capoeira techniques in the cage, and everyone was like, he just did a meia lua and knocked that guy out. Cool, that's the thing I practice. He's my hero. I love him. Is that guy the best wrestler? No. Is he the best jiu-jitsu guy? No. Is he going to be winning boxing matches against pros? Probably not. But did he do a really cool thing with capoeira kicks in MMA fights? Yes, he did. Because that's his strongest skill set. MMA is about using our strengths against our opponent's weaknesses. Really, every combat sport is, but that facet of the sport is really exaggerated and accentuated in the sport of MMA because there are so many more variables than, say, boxing. In boxing, it's still like a game of rock, paper, scissors, but it's much more nuanced. Everybody's essentially using the same weapons, they're just using those weapons slightly differently. Whereas in MMA, not everybody's using the same weapons or the same skill sets. Again, mixed martial arts was originally designed as a sport that would allow martial artists from different backgrounds to compete against each other to see which martial art is the best. Now, it's a different sport today. Because again, now we have mixed martial artists rather than the karate guy versus the sumo versus the boxer versus the jiu-jitsu guy, etc. But at the same time, the limiting factor is time. It always has been. It always will be. The limiting factor is time. There's only so many hours in the day you can train and only so many skill sets you can excel at. But look, why were people surprised when Francis Ngannou did so well and arguably, in the eyes of many of the fans, won the decision, even though on paper he lost? Why were we so surprised when Francis Ngannou did that? It's probably because we've seen so many of these celebrity Jake Paul-style matchups against retired MMA fighters where the young, healthy dude who trains exclusively in boxing is beating up the older, retired MMA fighters who don't specialize in boxing. And a lot of people expected to see that with Francis Ngannou. We knew he's a heavy hitter, but obviously boxing is this magical thing that you have to start from a very young age or else it's just not going to happen. Well, that's a bunch of crap. Combat sports do not require a childhood investment of time. Let me clarify that. There's a pretty steep sacrifice that goes into combat sports training. You need to log the hours. You need to sacrifice a big chunk of your life to get good at it. However, this myth that you have to start from childhood, early childhood, is silly and stupid and dumb. Now, if you have the advantage of starting early, obviously, you're going to start skill acquisition earlier, and you have the potential, possibly, but not always, you have the potential to acquire more knowledge, more experience in the sport. So if you go to an IBJJF tournament, and this is an interesting fact about IBJJF tournaments, my friend Dan Lukehart pointed this out to me on a podcast we did together. Go watch it. It's good. It's like 4 hours long. Brace yourselves. So if you're competing in an IBJJF tournament, when you register with the IBJJF, they take a picture of you, and they keep that same picture on record forever. Meaning, if you started competing as a child, the picture they have of you, even if you're an adult, is still your childhood picture. And so if you're competing in the adult division, and your opponent, your adult opponent, up on the screen they flash a child's picture, you know, or at least you should know if you're paying attention to what I'm about to tell you, that guy's been training since he was a child. That guy has a lot of experience in competition. He's been doing jiu-jitsu for a while, and he's probably pretty technically proficient at it. I cannot stress enough that MMA is its own unique sport. It's its own unique skill set. Just as Muay Thai is its own unique skill set. If you take a boxer and put him in a Muay Thai fight, and that boxer has zero experience in Muay Thai, he's probably not going to do very well against a skilled professional Muay Thai fighter. If you take a wrestler who has no experience with Muay Thai and put him in a Muay Thai fight under Muay Thai rules with an experienced Muay Thai fighter with a good Nak Muay, he is going to lose. If you take a karateka, if you take a taekwondo practitioner, if you take a sumo wrestler, if you take anybody from any other martial art that is not Muay Thai or significantly so similar to Muay Thai, it might as well be the same sport. I'm looking at you, Dutch kickboxing. Then they're not going to do very well in Muay Thai. There's always the possibility of the lucky punch, the puncher's chance, etc. But run that scenario 100 times, the overwhelming majority of those times, the Muay Thai fighter is going to win. Flip it up any way you want. Any way you want. Any combat sport. Olympic style Taekwondo. World Taekwondo Federation style Taekwondo. Okay? Bring in karate practitioners. They're not going to do as well as the Taekwondo guys. Bring in boxers. They won't do as well as the Taekwondo guys. Bring in wrestlers. They won't do as well as the Taekwondo guys. Bring in MMA fighters who don't do Taekwondo, and they won't do as well. It sounds like a no-brainer, and yet, as you rightly pointed out in your question, in your observation/question, people have this idea that an MMA fighter should be an expert in everything. Are you a jack of all trades and a master of none? No. I get asked a lot as an MMA coach, what's your specialty? And they're expecting me to throw out like the name of a martial arts style. Oh, my specialty is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. My specialty is Taekwondo. My specialty is boxing. And that wouldn't do it justice. My specialty as an MMA coach is observing movement patterns and developing game plans around those patterns to facilitate fighters to win fights. Oh, but what's your specialty as a martial artist, as a fighter? Well, I have a pretty broad spectrum of abilities and skill sets. And if I were to pick a single emphasis style, it wouldn't do it justice. Is my style exactly the same as other MMA fighters? No, absolutely not. If you look at my friend Kyle Rozuski, for example, he's been on my channel before. We've worked together. Awesome dude. He's won a ton of fights with his triangle choke. His jiu-jitsu is very sharp, and it's also subtly deceptive in ways that other people's jiu-jitsu is not. And yet, if I were to say he's a jiu-jitsu specialist, like that's his best thing, I'd be doing him a big disservice because he's got a very broad skill set that goes far beyond his ability to catch people with triangle chokes. But his skill set is different than mine. If you go to, say, the UFC Performance Institute here in Shanghai on sparring days, and because they invite people from the outside, non-UFC fighters, to come and spar with the fighters who are training there. They need some wild cards. They need some extra sparring partners. I go there sometimes, and the coaches there will always ask some questions about the sparring partners coming in. What kind of fighter is he? What does this fighter specialize in? And the answers are not, taekwondo, boxing. It's a run-through of the skill set. This guy is kind of a sloppy striker with really persistent takedowns and an amazing ground game. Okay? This guy is a really sharp out fighter with limited takedown defense, but he is really good off his back. Okay? So, all of these guys train in the same thing. They take the same classes. They cross-train in the same skill sets. But look, you went to school, right? Most of us did. Did everybody in the class get the same grades? Did you all get A+ in art and math and science and PE and history and all these other subjects? I'm guessing probably not. Some students excelled at math, some gravitated toward art and drama, or whatever the case may be. But you had the same teacher, the same instruction, the same exposure to the same material, in theory. But we all pick up different things at the end of the day. We all have different potentials and different talents. So once again, thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.